Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our study session regarding our cell tower. We've been over quite many months now. We've been looking at whether we want to keep the cell towers or sell them, and our attorney Jeff Forrester's been looking into it for us. Derek, do you want to give us anything before we get Jeff up?
Just a real quick synopsis of kind of where we've been and where we're going. I want to say it was probably close to 8 months ago or so, maybe 8 months ago, the Township Board entertained through a motion the idea of selling the cell towers. We have leases behind the public safety building and then those behind the post office, and both were offered up to the market for basically competitive bids. So the authority was given to Mr. Forrester to go ahead and put together those specifications and to get that information out with the idea of coming back to the board to review what offers we received. The highest bidder, and I don't recall exactly at this point how many we had. I think it was 3 or 4 offers. 4 offers. The highest bidder was $2.1 million for those assets. So there has been some conversation with the board, I believe, at other meetings with regards to that offer that we received. But we've gotten to the point, I think, where we need to review that with Mr. Forrester and decide what direction we as a township would like to go with that offer, whether that's something we're willing to accept or put forward as a rejection. So, but I know that the bidder is anxious about having a decision made so they know if the offer is something that's still being considered or is going to be accepted. So a formal decision, I think Mr. Forrester would like to have to pass along to them one way or another here fairly shortly, if at all possible. Jeff is in the audience tonight to be able to speak on behalf of the offer that was received, and then try to take any questions that you might have with regards to the specifics of it. If you remember, we had discussed a variety of different methods of investing those dollars to be able to try to receive a return that would ultimately return back to the accounts that those dollars, that rent that we currently receive, helps fund, which is over at the Centennial Farm and at the Public Safety Building. So I think we've talked about that a bit with regards to how we could invest those dollars to achieve that. But obviously there is some risk here, risk of potential returns in the future, appreciation, but there's also some benefits as to the reason why we might want to do this, and we can all have that conversation tonight. So hopefully that serves as a good introduction and puts us all on a level playing field with regards to where we're at and what we're talking about this evening.
Jeff, if you would tell us where we are.
We are. First, I want to just introduce myself again for anybody that wants to know who I am and what I'm doing around cell towers. I inherited all the wireless communications at Ford Motor Company years ago when I worked there, and I was an attorney there for years and worked in the IT area, and I owned all the walkie-talkies in the plants. I owned all the cell contracts for I wrote the first corporate cellular contract for Ford, actually, which was for Sprint, but that's another story. But anyway, so I've got quite a bit of background in that, and I've watched those contracts mature over the years. They once were just plots of land in a farmer's field, and they grew into these revenue machines that and now they've got very complicated contracts and agreements with them. So it's a specialty, and it's getting more and more challenging, as time goes by, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But I want to go back and to the very beginning, quickly as I can, and put this in context about what we're doing and why we're doing it. In early 2021, we started getting a lot of calls almost daily with cell companies or tower companies rather, wanting to buy those towers that we have out here. And this was going on and on and on. It was really a nuisance, the constant calls we were getting. The price started going way up, and that got our attention more or less. And so in October in 21, I drafted a letter to you, Jim, and that was, we're talking 16 months ago. But I drafted a letter to you saying this might be worth looking into because they're really bringing some money to the table, or at least they were saying they were. And then I offered to do that RFP, or request for quote rather, with the some of the more viable carriers, the ones that really were seemed to be putting their money where their mouth was. Took it to the board, told the board that with their approval, we go ahead and put that out there and see what we get out of those towers. Well, we came away with, and at that point we said, well, once we get the deal, we'll bring it back to the board for the board's approval, and that's where we're at right now on it. But we were able to get 21 times the annual revenue on those towers, which is kind of unheard of in the industry. That's how it's measured in the industry. Every sale is how many years of revenue can you get, and I was able to verify from some very, very influential, reliable sources in the industry that the 21X was a phenomenal price for those towers. Now, that said, my task was just to go out there and see what they do and see who put their money where their mouth was. So I don't have an agenda. I'm not saying, okay, I got it, let's go for it. I'm saying this is what they're offering. So whether we do it or not is immaterial to me. I don't care one way or another. So don't think I'm here to try to push the sale of the cell towers off on you. I'm here to tell you what the best deal possible was that we could get. And that's all I'm really here to discuss and help you make a decision on that one way or another. So with that, I guess our latest contract, we finally got this thing after months and months of just going back and forth over this thing. We finally got it down towards an assignable state. We can sign the contract now. That would start the due diligence period for the wireless company, and they may or may not come back at us with wanting cost concessions because of this or that or something, one thing or another they find during the due diligence period. So there's still quite a bit that would have to happen if you did approve the sale. Today I spoke with them, and I feel like a condo president on this job because I'm right in the middle of the crossfire here, getting all the grief and going back and forth, and I don't get paid for that. So that's so I'm the condo president of this deal. But at any rate, I had to listen to them PowerPoint yesterday when they heard that I was coming here tonight just for a study session and not for a signature on the contract and a vote. They took $200,000 off the table. Now, is that emotional talk or what? But now they're saying they're going to offer 1.9 instead of 2.1. My thinking is, if we went back and told them that we wanted to do it, we'd have a negotiating position that would be pretty strong to try to claw back to the 2.1. But I imagine they'd want to split it with us, and stick at 2 or something like that. But that's where we're at right now. And like I said, it's been 16 months now since this process started, and we've been working with PowerPoint since really almost this time last year. We ran the RFP in April and May, and we began to work on the contract I guess it was in May last year, because by July we had what we thought was going to be the first run on that contract, and then it's just been back and forth ever since then. So they're at their wits' end, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about it and see what you want to do about that. So with that, if there's any questions, comments, or something I need to explain a little better, I'd be glad to do that at this time.
Maybe can you go into a little bit of the reasons why you said that a liquidation of these assets would be beneficial, and then obviously some of the shortcomings of selling an asset like this, if you're willing to speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. The main thing about these tower deals is they're just getting more and more complex, more and more vicious as the technology changes. And I started really doing these contracts for the city in 2004, and I've been doing them off and on since then. But most of the contracts I've been able to manage. And one of the reasons that we have such a desirable set of towers is because we don't have right of first refusal clauses and all these other tricks and traps that carriers put in their contracts. I wouldn't let it happen. When we renegotiated, they were trying to put that stuff in there to frustrate these kind of deals. I told them, no way, you can't do it. So we've got good, clean contracts for the most part, and that's there's one or two that one in particular I'd change if I could, but I can't because it was done, when I wasn't doing the negotiations.
When is that one up, Mr. Forster?
The AT&T is up in about 3 years. Yeah, so it's that's up. Verizon's got, I think, another 5 or 8 years.
So there's multiple providers renting each tower,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, and that's
For a total revenue of $100,000 a year.
well, until this month, Sprint quit paying, and they were paying about $2,200 a month, I think. Dish is online to start paying, but their first 5 years is only $1,000 a month. So the deal was priced out originally at the full end price with Sprint. So we're going into a situation where we're actually losing money on the towers, but $1,000 a month, $1,300 a month, probably.
The company offering 1.9 million
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint would purchase the land the tower's on, along with the tower.
Yeah, not
Not the land.
yeah.
So they just buy they. So how do they own a tower on land and not on the land?
They're
under it?
leasing the land from us.
Okay, but they're buying the tower.
Buying the tower.
And then they would sublease the use of the tower to telecommunication companies, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and they know how to do it, and they're going to squeeze more money out of them than we're able to squeeze out of them. So it's going to be a good deal for them in that regard because they're a tower management company and we aren't. They've
Right.
got a lot of resources. So it's that. But one of the things, and where I was going with all this is, why would you want to part with them? I get hit by a bus. You're going to have to pay somebody big bucks to come in here and do those contract agreements, and the revenue that you're getting off of them is going to pretty much take a hit from that. I know right now some of these top cell tower companies are getting $800-900 an hour for negotiating those deals, and it's the kind of cost that you're going to end up having to pay. If you don't, you're just going to have the who's ever the latest attorney look at them, and they're going to put in and they're going to cut you off the knees. Unless you know what you're doing with those tower deals, they're going to get you, and they're very good at it. So you're not a tower company, and this is an opportunity to go out on top with a high price, and get out of the administration and get out of the contract negotiation and everything else of this technology that's just getting increasingly complex. So washing your hands of that and getting away from the administrative aspects of it is a good thing. Now, if you take that money and put it in the right investment and don't spend it, you can make more on that investment than you can with the tower revenue. And because you've got the cost of ownership with the tower revenue, you lose that cost of ownership if you enter into this deal. So there's a lot of good things about it in that regard, and you don't have to worry about the contracts getting renegotiated or everything else. The money the return that you're getting on your investment is going to replace that income and probably then some. You don't have to worry about Sprint going away or whatever else. That's not your problem anymore. So that's, yeah. Carl?
Jeff, you indicated cost of administration when you were before us a year ago, roughly. You indicated that there were some costs or perhaps liability for mismanagement of the tower and some of those things. Can you indicate what our current liability from a legal perspective is? Not dollars and cents, but just what we could expect.
If you're talking in terms of how it could go bad
Yes.
for us, those contract deals are 25, 30 years, and if you negotiate them incorrectly, you got a 25 or 30-year problem on your hands. And they're like I said, these guys are just cutthroat. They're very, very good at what they do, and they will get what they want out of you, unless there's somebody that knows the business well enough to get in there and negotiate against them.
What would be an example of something that, and if we have you on board, I'd expect that we're not going to have to navigate those waters. But I recall that as an administrator of the tower under our current arrangement, we could be responsible for some injuries to carriers for not properly maintaining or administering the tower services. Can you go into that a little bit?
We really, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no real liability threat with them working on those as part of the deal. They have to take care of their own when they're doing work on that property. They've got an easement on the property, and I guess if you had some hidden danger that you didn't tell them about, a manhole that the cover was missing on or something like that, then maybe. But that's the same kind of risk you'd have anywhere in the city. It wouldn't be particular to cell towers.
So continuing ownership of the tower really doesn't put us at any more risk than if we were to, other than being a landowner. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Jeff, what's the likelihood for increased revenue stream off of the towers?
It's about the same as decreased revenue on the towers.
Okay.
It's by that I mean, well, the technology, CBRS is the new thing right now, and it's 3.6 gig, and it's what that is regular cell tower. I'll try to make this. I wish I had a chalkboard because I can make it very simple in a chalkboard. But your cell phone is 900 megahertz. Well, that was the second generation, third generation. Then they came out with PCS, which was the data services. Well, that was 1800, which is 900 times 2. So they went from processing a full wave to a half wave for data, and they were able to speed up data input like that. So that was a real special thing. Then from there, they went to 4G, and now 5G, which is 3.6, which is twice 1800. So it's a quarter wave now. So you can use the same chipset on the phone to do all three of those spectrum areas, and that's why they're hot areas. Well, with 900, the old cell phone, you get the reception for about 2 miles, 3 miles from the cell tower. When you cut that in half, you're getting about 1.5 miles. So the half wave, the data is only good for half that distance, and the new quarter wave is only good for a quarter of that distance. So half a mile from the tower, you're going to get full blown everything you wanted as far as speed for data. When you get out a little ways further, your emails slow down and get lousy on you, and then after about 2 or 3 miles, you start dropping your calls. Well, any of these generations, any of these new generations, oh my goodness, the next one's coming out, it's the greatest. If you notice, your reception never gets better. The towers are built for economy for the carriers. They're not going to put a whole lot of money into that to make sure that you can get your phone everywhere in the area because it's just not cost effective. So coming back to your original question, we're going to start seeing a lot of small cell stuff, and that they're going to be using a chunk of the spectrum that the FCC auctioned off, largely to Verizon and T-Mobile. It's the CBRS stuff. That's a short hop transceiver, short hop network, and you're going to see antennas on homes, and it'll work kind of like the if you followed the when they had put the wireless stuff in the meters for the homes. One meter would talk to the other meter, and then that would talk to another meter, and so on and so forth. You're going to start seeing a network like that appear, and that's that CBRS stuff. That's going to pick up a lot of the data and a lot of newer technology, a lot of new communications work, and I think that's going to offload some of the things that the tower used to do. And I think there's a good chance that over time, towers might find themselves being a little bit antiquated, for the technology that's out there. So that's, what is it now, 30 years old, 35 years old? And we're looking at a deal that's 75 years long, to lease the property to them for those towers. And the technology's changed quite a bit in the last 30 years, and 75 years, I don't even know if it's going to be recognizable.
So talking about the cascading networks, you're talking about like Amazon Sidewalk. Are you familiar with Amazon Sidewalk?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it just, you ring doorbell, So theoretically, you could operate a series of room
Oh, yeah.
doorbells without having internet access because they would skip from one to the next.
Correct, yeah,
So
same thing.
I just
yeah.
kind of wonder what I feel like there's still a lot of data limitations because they can only run at 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, same as Wi-Fi networks. So
They just broke that theoretical cable limit of 10 gigs wirelessly, so we're going to see a lot of technology going crazy here.
okay.
Jeff, I guess this question goes to you. Maybe Jim can answer this, but I want to make sure I'm clear on something. You said that if we sell the towers, we still own the property. If we own the property, then we still lease on the property. What is the income that comes in from just leasing the property if you don't have the ownership of the tower?
Well, that's all baked into the original cost for a 75-year term. It reverts basically in 75 years, whatever technology's there and whoever's doing it at that time could tell them, get off the property or pay me big bucks to stay here.
So before the 75 years, what I'm getting at, I guess, is there's no rent to Grosse Seal Township after the sale of these towers
That's correct.
or anything, property or cell tower.
That's correct, yeah, it's all
Okay.
baked into the cost. Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure I was clear on that.
Yeah, it's baked into what they're giving us up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
So they're essentially paying their lease for the land up front.
Correct.
It's part of the cost. I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Do you still have more, Jameson?
No, thanks.
Joe?
Oh, no.
Well, again, I'm the liaison to the Community Recreation Commission, and as you know, Community Rec really relies on cell tower funds for maintenance and operations at Centennial Farm. So, and that, a big chunk of that comes from cell tower revenues. And I know we've addressed the fact that any purchase price would have to be, anything we get for the purchase would have to be reinvested in some manner so that we could recoup money. We would use it as capital,
Yeah.
and we would use the interest to replace what we lose from the cell tower funds that we now dedicate or earmark for the farm or other operations in the township. So I think we all agree that that's important. That's going to be an important thing in this decision. But the second thing is, and this might apply to the treasurer, aren't there limitations on how the township can actually invest funds? I know there are limitations on what we can do with tax dollars, but what do we do with a purchase like this? Can we invest it in a fund where we get a higher percentage, or are we also very limited in where we can tuck those
Still
funds?
limited.
Yeah,
No limit.
Can I ask you
You're
a
still
question?
limited.
You're still limited.
Can I ask Uta a question on this very same thing? Because I want to make sure I'm right on this too, and I apologize, but this goes exactly what you're saying. Now, I wish Ann would have been here tonight. I met with Ann.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm wrong, I apologize. I got to get straightened out on this investment issue. When it came to the beginning of this, they said that we would sell, say, $2.1 million. We'd put it in investment. You get so much out of it. You work with it, whatever you do. Okay, I sat in Ann's office. Is this correct? And if I misunderstood it again, it's not Ann's fault. I'm sure she explained it right. This time I'm sure it's me if I'm wrong. But she explained that I thought that this $2.1 million goes to a MERS fund. We can't touch it. We're not investing money. Like if we need 500 grand of it, we can't pull it back out. Once it's in that fund, MERS invests it. And if they make the 168 a year, which we figured out, then we don't have to pay them. We minus the 168 a year. We can't take this. If you're saying, what can we invest it in? I guess then that's not the program. But she said this would be invested into MERS, and the money that MERS makes. In other words, I said to her, what if we need 500 grand of the 2.1 for the roof falls in and we need 500 grand? Let's just say, no, we can't touch that money once it comes back out. And I said, okay, then who makes the decision on where that money goes? It was obviously the township board, but she said that's what it would have been earmarked for. Now, I don't know if you met on this. I just want to make sure I'm right in how this investment would work. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jeff, on this,
Oh, no,
but this is
it's-
an
it's
internal.
It's good that you asked this.
This
It's
is an
very
internal
good.
issue, and I went into her office, and I wanted to make sure I'm clear. But this is not a 2.1 we can put in the bank and get don't know, Dave, what do you get, 2%, 3%? I don't know, whatever you get.
No, well,
So this was earmarked to go to MERS, knock that down, and they would invest it, and whatever they made, we wouldn't have to pay them. That's how it is explained.
You're on the right track.
that's
You're on the right
close.
track because
Okay.
when we started looking at this, that was the main thing. We're not, if we just take that capital and just, okay, for 10 years or whatever, take care of public safety in Centennial Park, then what happens? Can we figure out something that we can go into to make the money so that it'll be an ongoing revenue stream or a replacement revenue stream? Ann talked about putting, as you say,
She was correct in this, and I
yes,
understood it this
because
way.
the idea was if we put the money in there, it would free up the money we're putting in now. That money that we freed up,
Right.
that we wouldn't be putting into
That's how she
MERS,
explained it.
would be more than enough to cover the money for rec and public safety.
Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure, and Jeff, I'm sorry if you.
No, no, it's
Because this was
good.
an internal kind of.
And that was,
Yeah, that was-
and we needed to come up, we said we gotta have an idea that we can have something like
Okay.
that, so that we have that money to go to public
That's
safety.
what was explained.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'd be,
All right.
that was one way of doing
Uta, I
it.
didn't mean to go into.
Excuse me.
Joe, I'm glad you asked
Yeah,
that.
that was
because
important for me.
Really is, that's kind of where I was going with this.
Okay.
But I mean, ultimately, ends up being a board decision too.
Oh,
where we do it.
correct. Nothing was earmarked,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
is a board decision.
Yeah, it did sound like it was
But there is
earmarked.
an availability out there that we could do something
Okay,
and
that's-
have that replaced, which was our main concern.
And just to clarify, it's the MERS retiree healthcare
Yeah.
vehicle, not
Not
the
a
pension
pension.
vehicle.
That's what she said, the healthcare.
Yep, and Gabriel Roeder's anticipated rate of return on that vehicle is 6.5%.
That's what she said,
And
exactly.
that's
Which
why,
which is 136,000 a year.
right.
Yeah, I was gonna say to get to
Yeah.
the 168,000, you need to be at 8.4%, which would be outperforming typical.
She
You'd
figured-
be
Yeah,
in
it's
like
168.
Warren Buffett, BlackRock.
It was up to 165, but I get it. No, I know the numbers. She was giving me a low and high. I get it, but it was up to 168 a year, but it wasn't coming back in our hand that way as what I thought.
Well, like the
That
supervisor.
I'm sorry.
Go
Dave.
ahead, no, I'm sorry.
No.
Like the supervisor mentioned, it offsets the contribution we make to that vehicle on an annual basis to that interest amount, and then that funding could be reappropriated towards those accounts.
Again, because later on the agenda, we have items of concern here where, especially in this case, dealing with Centennial Farm, where we need to make sure we can secure ongoing funding for maintenance issues. And that cell tower fund was always very important
Right.
in that direction. It still doesn't cover everything, but it covered enough. And so what I'm also worried about, it feels a little bit like we're between a rock and a hard place, right? If for instance, you said if we don't sell now, there's a possibility that in a few years, one, the asset may not be worth as much, or that the towers may become obsolete. There will be new technologies. There's also like cable. We used to get a lot of money from our cable revenues, right? There was a user tax on cable, and a certain amount was dispersed to communities, ostensibly for running cable. At some point, I think it was with AT&T or Ameritech, the state decided, and
Yeah.
you were with us at
AT&T,
the
yeah.
time. We lost control over that money. Does that potential exist with cell towers, that at some point we might also just lose the ability to, and here's the operative word, control, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just going to rumble just one more minute, because what gets me is the idea of control. Right now, we have the assets, we have the land, we have the tower, we own all the administration and all the headaches as well. But we have control, and we try to be able to say, you can do this, you can't do this, et cetera. If we sell the towers, obviously we keep the land, but we sell the tower. is there some control that we maintain that say they can't build it another 20 feet higher or 8 feet wider or make it look like a fake pine tree or,
Aesthetic control, yeah.
where does a sale leave us with those kind of things? So two things I'm worried about is replacement of the funds that we currently use and control of the tower itself, like what it, the aesthetics of it and how it works.
Yeah, just to clarify one point, it's true that there's a risk that it might be less lucrative in the future, but that's about a 50% chance. Then there's a 50% chance it could be more lucrative. So I think it's a wash. It's anybody's guess how that goes. As far as the laws changing to strip us of more autonomy, like which is effectively what they did with the cable revenues. I can't think of anything that would apparently happen that would take that control away from us. We control everything with that. Generally speaking, municipalities, cities sell tower assets because they need money. That's, we're looking at it because the price was just phenomenal that they were offering for it, and that's really where we're at. It's not we must sell it or we must sell it now. It's we've got an opportunity for $2.1 million for those assets now, and it's an asset that comes with some baggage that could include risk. So, but how long have we had them now? 30 years. So.
Can we quantify how much it costs us to operate and manage the towers in time, effort, et cetera?
Well, I've been doing most of the tower management, so you've been getting a sweet deal on that. Trust me.
We have spent $14,375 over the past 3 years with Mr. Forrester.
Yeah.
But like you said, that could change if you go away.
Well,
and we
Yeah.
have to get somebody else, then that also could go way up.
You don't make enough to get full-time help, and the part-time help that you need, if you got the right help, it'd be big dollars.
Yeah.
You're gonna be paying half the revenue you make for the first 10 years on that contract, just negotiating the deal. But unless you find somebody else that's willing to work like I'm working on them, but
So I guess I'm kind of with you on what you said about losing control. Uda, I think I'm a little more maybe a little more pie in the sky about the technology stuff, but I think that with loss of control we lose opportunity too, right? Like there's some things that communities can do, and this is where it's a little bit pie in the sky, but we're the kind of community that's tailor-made for like a community network and things like that. So I think we lose some of that opportunity if we just permanently give up the towers. Not to mention, I guess we could a rate of return of 8.4% a year on an account managed by MERS is probably pretty optimistic, especially with potential downturns and everything else averaged over time, and the fact that the $2 million that is sitting in that account, it's not accruing any more balance, it's removing the balance each year. So inflation's crushing that $2.2 million each year by whatever the rate of inflation is. We would have lost 8% this year on our $2 million because it's not returning the returns back to the principal. So I have some concerns in that regard. $100,000 a year, it's pretty good. I understand technology's changing, but I'm not entirely convinced cell towers are just going to be done in the next 5 or 10 years. So I guess my point would be, maybe we don't have to sell the cell tower today, right? Maybe we can hold on to it for a little longer, maintain our autonomy, continue to collect our rent. I'm sure rent's going to go up, and I guess if in 20 or 30 years we lose out on the opportunity because the whole island's full of 20G nodes, then I guess it was a bad deal and we should have should have done it.
And then, you know, it isn't a bad deal, because you're always, whenever you go to sell something, you're selling it. It, you know, down the pike, you look and you go, oh, I should have held on to it. I could have gotten more. Or you go, thank God I got rid of it. I'd be sitting here with a tower that I got to take down now, and it's worth nothing. So, I mean, every time you sell something, that's always something. So that's, you know, unless there's something ominous right in front of you and you're not doing it, which we're not faced with. You know, we shouldn't worry. I don't think we should worry about, could I made more? Could I made, you know, was it a good thing? It is what it is. If it's a good deal and we want to do it, we do it. If it's not to our liking, we don't do it.
That revenue from the cell tower now, the 100,000 that's generating today, that was higher at one time. Wasn't it up around 160 or 170,000?
No, it was actually lower.
The history's there on yours.
Yeah.
You can't read it.
Yeah, Derek.
Zoom in a
Farther
little.
to the left are all the contract, you know.
Can you zoom in on it? Yeah.
Nextel and whatnot. So these, is that better?
It's bad. It's bad for you.
Yeah, we just don't know what the lines are.
So here's all the different contracts: Verizon, Sprint, Nextel, T-Mobile, Metro, PCS. So that's what all these lines are, and those are the annual revenue. So let's focus in on. How's that? Is that
Yeah.
better?
So this bottom line on third from
Yeah.
the right, 436,430.
So pay attention to this line right there across. So 116, 117, 90, 92, 93, 96, 99, 75. I believe this column here doesn't have the new DirecTV $1,000 a month in there. So that's the history of the revenue for those contracts, is what you're looking at. So
We're currently
Okay.
at 75,908.
TV,
On,
$12,000
That'd
a
be
year.
85.
yeah.
history
And that
chart.
all came about with the T-Mobile and
There you go.
Sprint. And
So there's your.
Oh, yeah, we had more carriers. We used to have Metro PCS and,
Right.
didn't we have Metro PCS on there? I'm sure we had.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. That and Nextel, they're gone.
You have more to add? A few questions.
Yeah, at one time it was.
So, well, this is the first I'm hearing. We're down to basically 85,000 a year with Sprint now going away. May I ask why T-Mobile didn't take over the Sprint contract? That's just not how it works once they merge.
They were actually paying it for a while once they merged. They continued to pay us on that, but they dropped that in the end of March.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So
There's no way to. I assume there's nothing we can do about that. It's just that's the way it goes. Okay.
Yeah.
and Sprint's gone away,
Yeah.
just T-Mobile.
No, that makes sense. And then, and so the next real, I know, sorry, it's been a while since I looked at this. The next lease that's up, is it that AT&T lease in 3 years, or what's the next?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. And you and I, Mr. Forrester, had talked about this, and I know it's a completely different route to take than the route that was taken. But what would it cost for a management company, I assume like TowerPoint or the ones you went out to do more of a revenue sharing agreement over instead of like a $2.1 million, long-term agreement? Would it be like a 60-40 split that they would offer, or what would be the amount that you think you'd see?
It'd be a matter of negotiations, but I haven't seen a good deal like that. There's a municipality near here that cut a deal where they get $1,000 a month for each carrier, no matter what. And not TowerPoint. Who is it? Well, one of the cell tower management companies comes in there and takes care of everything and just sends them a check. And they lost Sprint, so they went from 4 to 3,000 a month.
Gotcha.
So they're
36,000. Yeah, a year.
that's just dismal compared to what we're making.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And AT&T is their original contract was negotiated very poorly, and if we still have the assets whenever that comes due, I plan to get them. so our income's going to improve there, but that's again it's technology, so
Just to, I mean,
flux.
I've expressed this to all of you in different forms. I wasn't as prepared tonight, but some of the concerns I have are, like, I think Jim basically said this, you can't tell what's going to happen in the future. But my biggest concern is by putting into MERS, we're taking away a diverse revenue stream that we have right now. A lot of our money is already in MERS, and we rely on MERS returns for a lot of our budget already. And so by putting it all in there, if something were to happen and returns were to be less, we're just taking away, we're adding to our risk by putting all our eggs in that basket, I believe. So that's a concern of mine. And it's just, it's a hard one. I wasn't here. Well, I was sitting in the audience when the four of you voted yes to go ahead with this. I wouldn't have known what to do with it then. It's hard to come in now at the end of this or towards the end of this and say that I have concerns with it. But yeah, it's tough news you're giving us today, Mr. Forrester, that they're down to 1.9 million and our revenues are down to 85,000. That's tough news.
And Kyle, you're not. You're actually not, because all we're doing is exploring right now. We haven't committed to anything. So that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So we want to hear this.
And one more question just for the public. As you all know, what's happening in Wyandotte with the cell tower and the school there, there's a lot of concerns about that. And I just want to clarify for the public, and you all will help me with this. I mean, these aren't near any schools or anything like that. They're behind a public safety building and behind the post office. Very few people are around these cell towers, so there aren't the same concerns, I don't think, as Wyandotte has, or Wyandotte residents have with their cell towers. So I just want to put out there for the public.
And
Yeah.
I know.
I think that cell tower that they're talking about that was in the news, I think it was, the arrangement they had is it paid them $1,000 a month.
Oh, was that it?
I
For
mean,
Wyandotte?
Yeah, they got burned on that.
yeah, I mean,
But, bottom line, what you raised too is there's a reason why there is a cell tower behind what was once the old Township Hall, right? That was, when that cell tower went up, Township Hall was located there. And then the cell towers behind public safety, of course, made sense because public safety needed communications, and they're set off in an area. We've had proposals, I believe, in the past for other cell towers, but we're also really limited because of the airport. You can't put up cell towers of
Just anywhere.
Right, anywhere. So I think the schools at some point had considered maybe behind the high school or the middle school at some point, but that never came to anything. A big concern residents have had over the years, of course, too, is once you get, within, a quarter of a mile of East River, you're in Canada all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So we've just always had those kind of ongoing issues with the cell towers too, and so I think that's what's also limited why we have so few, why we didn't go whole hog into it more.
That was one of the things that I thought would be a kind of a nice ad if we did sell the tower, and that would be that we have one throat to choke. So we could go after them about the reception and everything else. But our biggest limitation is Canada, and they kind of have to tiptoe around getting mixed in with Canada's cellular operations. So I don't think the reception is ever going to get much better. No matter whose throat you choke.
I know. Verizon hasn't done a whole lot with updating their equipment and everything on
Right.
the island, which is one of the reasons.
Yeah, they
we
just-
have the poor.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to?
Verizon just did update their antennas, and that was the first time in 20 years, 25 years. So they were maybe not 25 years, but yeah, they just did update them, and they have big plans for higher frequency stuff too. That's going to happen on small cells more than likely.
Because it seems like we have no trouble getting the interference from the Canadian side. And you're always seeing, you're roaming to Canada. And are you getting something? I know whatever the predecessor to AT&T when they. Whatever they had, I was constantly getting bill, showing that I was, roaming to Canada, and but we don't seem to have that in reverse.
For whatever reason, we're very gingerly with Canada and their frequencies, but they'll walk right over the top of us.
Yeah.
So it's I'm not sure what's going on there, but
Yet they're supposed to be so polite. Derek?
Just one quick question for you, Jeff. Would selling the towers inhibit our ability to try to pursue carriers for better service? Or, because I had heard that was a concern, if we didn't own them, then it limited our ability to have influence with them with regards to improving the quality of service on the island.
well, we're kind of a too small to beat up the carriers and make them, give us really great reception here and there, So the tower companies, they're going to have a bully pulpit with those folks. They know what they're capable of. They know how to operate them. They know what they can do and what they can't do. And if we make enough noise, like I said, we'd have one throat to choke, and we could probably get some reception improvements. But again, I don't think they're ever going to be really great for us because of the Canadian border primarily. But that's one of those things that drives me crazy, knowing the technology is, and that's seeing the new generation of phones coming out, and they hype them like crazy because they want to sell handsets. But the reality is, you've got a commercial tower that's tweaked for economy, and it's not going to get any better. So no matter what generation you get, your reception's still lousy. So if G6 comes out, Generation 6 comes out, and suddenly I got reception everywhere, I'm going to say, wow, something special really happened here. But other than that, it's a lot of hype.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Jim and Jeff, if I understand this correctly, the options going forward are to do nothing and continue with the contracts that expire in 3 to 5 or 8 years and renegotiate at that time. Or we can sell and be stuck with specific amount of revenue going to MERS that we cannot use.
Or wherever we decide for it.
Yeah.
That's one option.
MERS was an option because with that option, we would have the money to replace what we're.
Or number 3, the third option being we can put it in some kind of other investment that will
for
allow
other
us to do
investments,
that.
yeah.
Those are the only 3 options that I see. Are we missing any? Am I missing anything?
And keeping it, just to be clear, and I'm probably simplifying, if we keep it, what we're stuck with is basically when the contract is up, renegotiating a new contract.
Yeah, that's
Then
correct.
and the contracts are long-term, and then you're stuck with that contract for 25, 30 years. And that's it. There's not a whole lot that goes on in between.
That's correct, other than 1,000 phone calls a day from tower companies wanting to buy the towers.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if, I guess I want to just, if, so we're talking about, that issue of what we have to deal with if we continue to keep the towers. If we sell the towers, and there are constant technological changes and things, is it possible, I guess, then for us to build in, we definitely then lose control, right? Remember how people were very upset about 5G? And, it's coming and we have no control over it. Well, what if there's something else? Possibly, I tend to be cynical, so something more sinister on the horizon, to keep an eye on all of us or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't Kool-Aid either, it was cranberry juice. But then if we sell the towers, we really don't have a dog in that fight, right? We just have to pretty much take whatever tower point manages to put on those towers?
Well,
I'm asking, is that where we would
but
be?
along with it, the 5G was where the government was involved, and telling local governments what they could do, basically you couldn't do anything. Here's what we're going to allow you, and this is all you're going to get. I mean, that was the government, not the cell towers.
Right. But what I'm worried about is if we sell the asset, now the new owner is going to tell us, well, guess what? This is what we're going to do with the tower, and what do we then do as a landowner, as a community?
I know the new contracts do exactly that. They take away, they'll commit, they'll say, oh, well, we're gonna buy this property and we're gonna build a tower here. And we promise we won't steal your carriers, from another tower. But then they'll sell it to somebody who will steal them. So,
Okay,
I
so
didn't do it.
yeah,
They did.
yeah, so, yeah, no, you're.
I'm looking for reassurances that really
Yeah.
don't exist, right? It's a,
Well, and they
No,
can't.
I think there's legitimate, legitimate thoughts for discussion, because it's, you're going to lose control. Now, how much, what I discussed with them during the RFP was, I said, we need aesthetic control over that, so that they don't put some ugly thing up there that we don't get an opportunity to have, get our word in on it. And the tower company claims they will, but bottom line is they buy these assets not to serve the community and because they're great people. They buy it to turn a buck. And if somebody else comes along, and American Tower, somebody comes along and says, "We'll give you $2.5 million for it," they're gonna pocket $400,000. And what's American Tower gonna do? Take the contract and say, "Well, we better honor these contracts because TowerPoint made them." No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way in the cellular world. So,
Jeff, that goes back to my last question, and that is, if we wait the 5 years or 8 years, are we looking at other towers being put up there where we become non-essential? They're not interested.
They can't.
no, yeah,
So it's our
We're gonna have to-
property.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if in another community or something like that, do we become irrelevant at that point?
no, because there's really 3 towers for the island. The big one over here in Gibraltar gets the south end of the island. The ones by the fire station and post office, they get the center of the island, and then Riverview's got a tower up here for the north end of the island. And that close to Canada, there's not going to be any new cell tower assets going in. You might see some small cell stuff coming in, for to expand some of the higher frequency network distances that they can carry. But you won't see tower assets change at all.
I'm not seeing any real reason why we would need to jump on this. Certainly not tonight, but
Went 2.1
even this
million.
year.
If you went 2.1 million,
We're
we
down
got
to
it for you.
1.9 million,
Yeah.
and I don't like somebody putting a gun to my
I
head
don't
and
like that.
saying,
Yeah,
we're going to go on a date, and by the way, you're buying.
yeah.
I don't like that
No,
either.
I'm not a
Carl,
big fan.
that's only with you.
Perhaps it is.
Question for Jim and Derek, if I may. So if we're down to 85,000 a year, how does that split between Centennial and the public safety? Does it go down to a 60-40 split no matter what?
Want
Or
to split it.
what?
Do you remember what it is this year?
I think it's split in half.
Is it 50-50?
I'm pretty sure it is.
But
50
we
grand
can do
apiece.
it any way we want.
Sure.
That's just the way we've been doing it.
Traditionally, it's been like 50-50 down the middle. I don't think that changed in the budget,
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
amount.
Gotcha.
So, and I don't know that once again, the 85,000 is, got the DirecTV money in there either, so it could be a little bit more than that. And when Ann figures out those budget allocations, she takes a look at the contracts and does her projections and stuff, so we can get you the exact budget numbers. Let you
There's
know.
one other small thing that may or may not be a consideration. I'm not sure what the status is, but AT&T allowed the police, maybe the police and fire, to use one of those sheds for storage, one of those radio shacks for storage. They'd likely get evicted. So, just so you know, once it's sold, they're going to want to come in there and claim their assets, and that's part of it. So,
Well, then maybe they go up to 2.15 million.
well, Dish came over and took the power off that, or they were going to anyway. I'm not sure how that turned out, but and I'd have made Dish run the line from Sprint, from the old Sprint site, because it was there and ready to go. They just had to run a little extra cable.
One,
All set? All set? Yeah.
one quick
Derek?
one. Do you recall if the township has ever went out for RFPs on the cell tower assets, disposing of them, what those offers were? Because I think part of the conversation also is the appreciation of the asset between maybe what it used to be worth in an offer versus what it is now. Do you recall us ever going out for those? Okay.
No, it was, it's been really a evolutionary process. Again, like I said, originally it was just plots of land. And then, to avoid taxes, Verizon would come in, build a tower, monopolar, and then they'd give it to the township so they wouldn't have to pay taxes on it. You know, and so it was kind of a fiction that we own it, but they avoid the taxes of having that tower.
Right.
And then they pay us for the rent on that tower. And so that's how it kind of evolved. And now the newer contracts are coming in there, and they're going right back to the land, and that's all they're getting. And they'll do anything they can then after that to build the revenue on it without your input or without your sharing in the wealth. So you're just selling the land, you're just leasing them the land, and that's all the new contracts look like now.
Which is what is before us if we were to go with it.
Yeah.
Everything on that tower, they own the tower and everything on it, and they're just leasing the land. And
Yeah.
they got that deal with what they're offering us. the
Yeah, it's
2.1.
Yeah, it's basically it's an asset they can sell on that property.
Right, right.
And so they want the townships, the cities off those towers and back onto the
Back
plot.
on, yeah.
And that's where this deal puts us. So make no mistake about
Yeah,
that. We're back
yeah.
in the land leasing business, and we're no longer in the revenue business from cell towers.
Right.
So they're buying that out from us on this deal and making us land leasers again. So.
All right. Anything else? All set? Okay, what I'd like the board to do, and thank you very much, Jeff. I think
Jeff.
you, it was a good discussion. I think you educated us very well on where we are. I would just like to ask the board to go back, over the next few days here, think about what you've heard tonight, what your thoughts are. What I would like to do in the near future, if not the next meeting, the meeting after, is come to a decision on this. But I want to make sure two things: that you've had enough time to think about it, and also that any other questions you might have that after you think about what we heard tonight, we get answered for you, and then we'll make a decision. So if you could get back to me when you're just letting me know you're ready to go, that you've made up your mind. And obviously, I don't want to know your decision. We'll take care of that with the action item, but just that you're ready.
Jim, one of the things that I would like to see before we have that meeting would be for Ann to give us some kind of an idea what our investment options really are and what they've
Well,
done
that'd be one of the
historically.
things that you would need to
But
know.
I'd like to have her present that to the board.
Well,
some
she
kind
can.
of a
We'll
paper.
get something out. Yeah, that's what we need, because we need that even to consider going that route. You need to have how does this work? Why does it work?
That would be the biggest thing for me to look at is where we're going to go with it, and where the money's going and what we can do with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was even. I mean, we weren't even considering looking at it until we came up with some idea that because using the principal was not an answer. It had to be we generate revenue from that. So, and that was one way of doing it. So yeah, we can get in on that and get something out to the whole board on it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm available too in my office
Yeah,
if
and
anybody wants to call and get a finer discussion on a point or two. So
I would encourage that, because we should have all board members should have all their questions answered before they come to a conclusion, and then we vote on it. And we aren't in a position that we have to go one way or another.
yeah,
One final question, Jeff, just to kind of wrap this up. You had indicated that they had gone from 2.1 to 1.9 and needed to have some kind of an answer what direction we're going. You've heard what Jim has just simply stated, and we've restated the place where we are right now. Do you need anything more from us tonight?
I would appreciate a quick decision because I take a lot of grief from these guys.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeff, because this we went through going out for bids. We got the 4, and it was kind of 2 and 2. 2 were kind of really low, and 2 were in the ballpark. We came to this. Tower Point's been hanging around for quite a while with their offer out there. So even with them pulling back, I mean, I understand why they did it. Doesn't mean we wouldn't ask for it back, but they want a decision, which is only fair. So that's what we're going to give them.
If you're satisfied with that, I think we're all in agreement.
And yeah, I encourage you, if you have questions on that, call Jeff. And get your answers. And we'll get Ann on that tomorrow. I'll talk to her.
All right, thanks, folks.
Talk to her. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. I know it's after 7. We said we're going to, yeah, our regular meeting starts at 7, but we've been going for an hour here. We're going to just take a real quick break. If you leave, board members, please come back quick, and we'll get started with our regular meeting. Thank you.